Roswell, New Mexico sits nearly 200 miles from the nearest interstate highway. It is one of the largest cities in the United States with that distinction. A town of roughly 48,000 people marooned on the high plains of the Pecos Valley, reachable only by long two-lane federal routes. US 285 dropping south from I-40 through grassland where the towns are 40 miles apart. US 380 running east from the mountains. US 70 angling down from the northeast. Every approach a commitment of hours across some of the emptiest country in America. By every rule of American tourism, nobody should come here. And yet, every July, tens of thousands of people make the drive. And every year, a couple 100,000 more walk through the doors of a converted movie theater on North Main Street. And they come from Japan and Germany and every state in the Union. And they come because of something a sheep rancher found scattered across a pasture after a thunderstorm in the summer of 1947. Roswell is the most famous detour in America, a destination with no interstate, no beach, no mountain, no theme park, nothing but a story, and the story is not even, strictly speaking, about Roswell. That is the tale we are telling today. To understand it, go back to the first week of July 1947, to a violent overnight thunderstorm on the plains 75 miles northwest of town, near a ranching village called Corona. The next morning, William Mac Brazel, foreman of the Foster Ranch, rode out with a young neighbor boy named D. Proctor to check the sheep, and found a pasture strewn with debris, foil-like metallic material, sticks, rubber, tape printed with odd markings, wreckage of something that had come apart in the sky. Brazel gathered pieces, showed them to his neighbors the Proctors, and on Sunday, July 6th, drove the long road into Roswell, because Roswell had the two things Corona lacked: a county sheriff and an air base. Sheriff George Wilcox, only mildly interested, telephoned Roswell Army Airfield, and here the story acquires its strangest verified fact, the one that no skeptic disputes and no believer needs to exaggerate. Roswell AAF was home to the 509th Bomb Group, at that moment the only unit on planet Earth trained and equipped to deliver atomic weapons, the men of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The most elite, most security-conscious outfit in the American military collected the debris, and on July 8, 1947, under orders from Base Commander Colonel William Blanchard, Public Information Officer Lieutenant Walter Haut issued a press release announcing that the Army had recovered a flying disc. The Roswell Daily Record put it in headline type. For roughly one day, the United States military officially possessed a flying saucer. Then, just as fast, it didn't. General Roger Ramey in Fort Worth called reporters in, spread torn foil and balsa and rubber across his office floor, and announced it was a weather balloon. The papers ran the correction. Brazel, after several days in the military's company, gave a newspaper interview that read like a man reciting, and went back to his sheep, reportedly bitter about the whole affair for the rest of his life. And then, and this is the part modern audiences never believe, the story simply stopped. Not for a year, for 3 decades. No cult, no pilgrimage, no aliens on Main Street. Roswell went on being a ranching and dairy town with an air base. The base itself, renamed Walker Air Force Base, closed in 1967 in a blow that gutted the local economy, and the flying disc of 1947 survived only as a curiosity in old newspapers. The Detour did not exist yet, because the story that creates detours had not been assembled. The assembly began in 1978, when a nuclear physicist turned UFO researcher named Stanton Friedman tracked down Jesse Marcel, the retired intelligence officer who had collected the debris from Brazel's pasture, and Marcel said plainly that what he handled that week was, in his belief, nothing made on this earth. The 1980 book The Roswell Incident lit the fuse. Researchers Don Schmidt, Kevin Randall, and Tom Carey spent the following decades interviewing hundreds of aging witnesses. The accounts grew to include crash sites and bodies, and in 1992, Walter Haut himself, the man who had typed the original press release, co-founded the International UFO Museum and Research Center in a former movie house on Main Street, institutionalizing the mystery in the town where he still lived. The federal government responded twice, in 1994 and 1997, with reports concluding that the debris almost certainly came from Project Mogul, a top-secret program flying trains of balloons and radar reflectors from Alamogordo to listen for Soviet nuclear tests. specifically Flight 4, launched June 4, 1947, and never recovered, and that later alien body accounts likely traced to crash test dummies from other programs. The explanation was plausible, documented, and arrived 47 years late, and it changed almost nothing, because by then the story had done what stories do in empty country. It had become the landscape. And Roswell, a town that had lost its airbase and needed a future, looked at the tide of curiosity rolling toward it and made a civic decision that borders on genius. It stopped debating the story and started hosting it. The streetlights on Main Street wear alien eyes. The McDonald's is built in the shape of a flying saucer. The annual UFO festival each July floods the town with costumed pilgrims, scientists, skeptics, and documentary crews. The museum Hout founded draws its steady couple 100,000 visitors a year, laying the competing narratives side by side and letting each traveler pick. Little green men sell everything from banking to burritos. It is easy to smirk at until you run the arithmetic of what this story replaced. A shuttered Air Force base, a farm economy at the mercy of drought, a city 200 miles from an interstate, and against all of that, a self-renewing global brand that costs nothing to import and never runs out. Other towns got a freeway. Roswell got a myth, and the myth, unlike the freeway, cannot be bypassed. Which brings us to the geography that makes this the most famous detour in America, and to its quiet ironies, because the physical facts have never matched the legend's address. The debris field lies on the old Foster Ranch near Corona, 75 miles northwest of Roswell, 30 miles from Corona's single street, and Corona, population under 200, has almost nothing to say about it. One alien dummy standing in a dead phone booth outside the motel. A frontier museum whose volunteers report that visitors never even ask. The event is named not for where the thing fell, but for where the press release was issued, for the town with the base and the sheriff and the newspaper, which is to say, for the town with the infrastructure. And there may be no purer demonstration in American history that the road, not the event, decides where fame lives. In recent years, the ranching family that now owns the crash site began running occasional tours, shuttling visitors from a Roswell mall 75 miles out to stand in Mac Brazel's actual pasture, where the sheep pens he worked are reportedly still in use, unchanged, the most ordinary place on earth wearing the most extraordinary story in the world. So make the detour. It has to be deliberate, that is the point. You will leave Interstate 40 at Klein's Corners or Vaughn and point yourself down US 285 into 100 miles of grass and sky, or come up through the oil country from Carlsbad, or over the mountains from Ruidoso on 380, and either way the land will get emptier as the story gets closer, which is exactly backwards from how tourism is supposed to work, and exactly why this pilgrimage feels like one. Do the drive at night at least once, the way everyone eventually does, the highway dead straight, no towns, no lights, the sky above the Pecos Plains so black and so crowded with stars that you begin, around the second hour, to understand the whole phenomenon from the inside, because in country like this, the sky is not scenery, it is the main event, and anything falling out of it would be the biggest thing that ever happened. Then walk Main Street in the morning among the aliens, tour the museum in the old movie house, and hold both truths at once, that the government's balloon explanation is probably right, and that it does not matter at all. Because somewhere northwest of town, out past the last fence line, there is a pasture near Corona, where something genuinely did fall out of the sky one stormy night in 1947. And a rancher genuinely did gather the pieces, and the atomic bomber base genuinely did announce a flying saucer to the world and take it back the next day. And from that 72 hours of confusion, a 2-lane road in the middle of nowhere became one of the most driven detours on the planet. The trucks still have to go the long way around. The interstate never came, the saucer, depending on your reading, never came either. The people come anyway, by the 100,000, down the empty highways under the enormous sky, chasing a story to the one town in America that understood, earlier than anyone, that a mystery, properly maintained, is infrastructure.